we're going to do 20-minute stations. So we're just going to rotate through the stations. Jerome is one station where you'll be doing sheet mulching and building
worm farms.
I'm a station where we're going to just build a compost pile, and then Cindy's a station where she's going to give you a tour of what's going on here on the property.
2 here and 35 over there. Yeah. So we go all the way to this slope.
We're going to do Polish worm farming. You're up for that? It'll drain, but it won't leak out if you put the carbon down in there. I'd rather use this alfalfa. Or get a bucket and put that in there. Just
a few scoops of manure.
So we got carbon, nitrogen, putting some worms on this layer. We're going to put some more worms on the top. But we're also going to put some wood chips in and some mycelium. Alfalfa is good for bacteria, but it's not good for mycelium. Go ahead and put some wood chips in there. It's not good for mycelium. The wood chips will host the mycelium. So we might as well get the mycelium going in here and the bacteria and all the worm casting, so you have this complete kind of, cosmic soup, as I call it. Everything is going to be there, so you don't have to add mycelium later. You've already got it for free. Start watering this down. There's a hose right here. And so we're going to put some of this mycelium in here. Spread this out a little bit. And just go ahead. I'm not going to do it.
So mycelium is mushrooms?
Mushrooms, right. The spores are in.
Any kind of mushroom?
Yeah, that should be enough to inoculate it. Right? It makes the carbon more yummy for the worms, so they'll go down.
It's already leaching out of the bottom.
That's fine. So let's put some, now just to get another, let's use some of this.
Straw in there?
Yeah, let's use some straw, and it's just another source of carbon.
Do I look for it like the kind that wants to grow?
Don't do it, don't do it.
Now,
Let's
is the
not.
mold a bonus?
It's partially broken down already, so put some more manure on it, okay? Put some more.
Somebody grab a shovel! Jenna, grab the shovel!
Yeah, straw over here, and we'll put the rest of the worms on it, and we'll put this in the greenhouse when we're done, so it doesn't freeze. And I'll stack these, and in about 6 weeks, this will all be broken down. And what I would do is, like every two or 3 weeks, I would go in there and just take an empty bucket and turn it, and just take a fork and mix it up a little bit so that there's some dry spots that'll all kind of get, and wet it down again. If I'm watering in the greenhouse, I'll water these things. And if they're stacked, I can just water the sides. I'll show you after we're done. Now let's put the rest of the worms on here.
How about any more wood chips? Or?
Yeah, let's put some, after we put the rest of the worms on here.
Yeah. So you say you can stir it every time?
Yeah, I stir it or just dump it from one bucket to, yeah. Unfortunately, I'm going to make one of these for the other group. So let's go ahead and finish this off with some wood chips,
okay,
and some more hay, and put some more water on it now. Keep wetting it down. Get some mushrooms on it. Put the mushrooms on it after. Yeah.
More straw under the.
Yeah, just on top. Yeah. More water. Yeah.
Cosmic soup.
And I think I'm going to make. I don't have one to.
And you sell these buckets.
Yeah. Well, I could take it to a farmer's market, and then I could ladle out these worms, because once they're down there, it'll be full of worms. Just like these buckets here were pretty full of worms. And then I could just ladle it out into a 1 gallon or 10 gallon or 5 gallon bucket, sell it for $40. I could sell, you know, $100, $200 worth of worms.
So 4 to 6 inches of high carbon material. So what are some of the high carbon materials?
Cardboard,
Hey,
hay,
Yeah.
sunflower stalks,
Right?
leaves,
Yep. Straw.
straw.
Things like that. And then you're gonna do 4 to 6 inches of greens. So what are greens?
gooey stuff.
Gooey stuff.
Weeds
Right.
that haven't gone to seed,
Garden scraps.
Yep.
vegetables.
Could it just be lawn clippings?
It could be lawn clippings as long as you don't, which none of you do, but treat those clippings with herbicide. So, and with things like that too, you want to make sure with newspaper, with leaves, with lawn clippings that you get air into it. So, you know how they sometimes have a tendency to mat down, you want to make sure that doesn't happen. Or that as you're adding them to the pile, you're kind of fluffing up this area. So we could add a little more water to that.
What about like coffee, ground coffee? Is that considered green or red?
That is considered green. Yeah, and that's great in terms of adding to the pile. That heats the pile up really quickly. That's mostly empty, where I'm starting to throw new kitchen scraps and leaves. And this time of year, I'm starting to collect more leaves around town because we don't generate enough on our property. And I'm just kitchen scraps, leaves, kitchen scraps, leaves. So throughout the winter, by the end of the winter, that bin is full, maybe the other one is half full, and then that's the material that I start to do it again.
So you would just like accumulate through the winter and just keep it covered with a tarp so the
Yeah.
snow doesn't get in there, you can keep adding to it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So those are some of the techniques that I use. Some people do, they'll insulate a pile with straw bales like this and keep it going for longer,
Right.
because it's insulated and you're able to do your work. But for this situation, you get to that 3x3x3 and then it'll cook down, and then once a week you can add more kitchen scraps to it when you're turning it. But at a certain point you want to stop doing that, because you want to let the whole thing cook down and decompose.
When is that point versus when you could actually use the compost on your wherever you're going to use it?
I mean, it depends. I would say it's like a 6-week period. Once you go down this rabbit hole, there are some people who are like, I can make compost in 6 weeks, and it depends on but the natural order of things is more like a couple months for the whole thing.
Do you use a thermometer?
Breaking down. And you can use a thermometer if you want. So you'll see where, but a lot of it is just kind of that experiential. When compost is down because it looks like compost. You can't see any of the component parts to it except the avocado pits. But, so then when it's done, and it'll be about 50% of the size that it was when you started. But what Jerome was saying too is, within 5 days you got the thermophilic, all the microorganisms that are starting to break down, and as it gets cooler, then the worms move into the system and do their work. But you can get those temperature gauges that are like meat thermometers, where you can check, and it's like active or hot or whatever. You can do that if you want that, but you'll also notice, of course, yourself, a week afterwards, you're turning the pile and there's steam coming off the pile.
I've had trouble just like not getting it hot enough. Like it never gets to it, but it's always missing something. Like it's not wet enough. Like is that why it doesn't get warm?
Typically, if it's not getting hot enough, it doesn't have enough nitrogen in it.
Okay.
So adding comfrey. So that over there, do you grow comfrey?
Yep.
Yeah. So adding comfrey leaves into the pile, or just more of a volume. So basically it's half and half, right? It's half high carbon,
Right.
half high nitrogen. So that's usually when a compost doesn't heat up, it's usually that you don't have enough nitrogen or that it's not moist enough.
Comfrey. Some comfrey.
High in nitrogen.
What makes
If we dig down in here, this is our our compost. There's still some, you can see wood chips still in here and some pine needles and that sort of stuff. But for the most part, it's gone down probably about 75% in volume. So that is some pretty lovely stuff.
Sheet mulching with some cardboard. Basically, the cardboard is going to suppress the grasses more than just the mulching, the sheet mulching. We're trying to kill out the grasses around the fruit trees here and around the raspberries. So we're going to put the cardboard down first, and we're going to put
like more than this.
I think it's more. We're going to actually put some comfrey down. And then we're going to put some of the rotten straw down with carbon nitrogen layers, alternating. I put the drip line on top. Make sure that drip line's all the way on top.
Where at?
Then using straw and manure.
Pour this on top?
Yeah, you can just sprinkle that on top. We need to get some more.
Oh yeah.
What happens when you put the straw up against the
Should we do
trunk?
straw first?
Well, you create a
One more load over here.
situation where you could have rodents coming in there and girdling the tree. Now this should have one of those plastic guards, but it doesn't have it. Because it we create habitat for
I've had that experience. Made that mistake.
spreading.
Well, that's llama manure, right?
Yeah.
Which is awesome
Get the
stuff,
hose
isn't
and
it?
start watering it in.
And just what way are you talking about? It's awesome stuff.
So we did the paper, the alfalfa, and straw, and then we did the llama manure, and then we can go back and do another layer of straw.
You have to be careful about not overdoing the manure.
No, we don't have enough manure, so it's a very small ratio of manure to. You wouldn't have to worry about that. It's winter time, and there's a lot of carbon there, very little nitrogen.
What if you did it in the spring? Would that be more of a concern?
Probably not, no, because you're adding a lot of carbon. So the carbon balances all the. So you're not going to get a very high ratio anyway. I always think about the manure as like. I always think of manure as like, and straw is like soy sauce on white rice. So nobody's going to eat white rice without soy sauce, but the worms are not going to eat the straw without some manure on it that's being watered down and made into worm tea, or compost tea, or manure tea, right? Then, so once you water that manure, it's dissolving and it's impregnating the straw.
So is the plan to impregnate this with worms then?
Well, if we had some worms, we'd throw them in there right now too. But we already made our worm farm, so we've used up all our worms. But in the spring, we could take those worms and add them in here. Right now, it might not be a good idea because they may freeze, and you would lose them. And so they're not going to be too active. But this is going to kill the grass out, and it's going to settle in, and we could do a lot more mulching here with these bales of hay, alfalfa that we had here. I like to take these large bales and roll them out in here. We'll take huge bales of alfalfa and roll them out and cover all this grass.
Yep.
And kill it out and mulch the entire area.
I do that in a lot of ways in my garden.
Right. And then you can dig that up and put it on the garden beds right after.
Yep. I just keep putting it around the plants, bringing it up.
Well, that's what I do in my pathways in my greenhouse. But you can do that in a regular 4-foot garden bed. You're walking on pathways and it's muddy. And instead of just wood chips, why not do exactly what we're doing here? Put flakes of hay or straw and some manure and another flake and build it up. And then put that over the winter, and then in the spring it's all broken down. When you go and shovel that up, put it on your garden bed, you don't have to make a compost pile. You're just composting in the pathway. And then, maybe if you don't have more straw or hay, put some wood chips in there for the summer. And then you've got a clean pathway. Or throw some clover in there and grow clover in your pathway.
Certainly does away with the weeds.
And it keeps the pathways clean and dry. And
They just put asphalt paths
sure, asphalt.
so they can do snow removal. Yeah.
So they can do what?
Snow removal at the school.
And ADA Hopefully we won't get any more paved pathways. We got one.
Planting some Jerusalem artichoke. Make a hole and stick it in, and then
But manure
and straw. What she said.
So these got damaged, but
Are you putting a couple of them together?
yeah, you just put that whole thing in there.
Okay.
So how deep do you want to dig it?
Yeah. Is that
You have to get it under the ground.
all right?
And we're also going to put some straw and hay on it so it keeps it from drying out. And such a useful plant. They are fire break, they are wind break, a dust break, they're fodder for animals, they're bee fodder for bees, and they're food for humans. They're survival food. So
Is that because they don't taste good, or?
Oh, they're delicious.
no, they just they're used as like the last source of, like the Indians ate them in the spring when there was nothing else to eat. The Native Americans or the settlers, when their root cellars were empty, they would go out to their Jerusalem artichoke patch and dig them up, and that was their last sort of ditch bag source of food.
Oh, they are.
And you get them early enough in the spring before they start to sprout, otherwise they'll give you gas. You have to get them really early in the spring.
Oh, that's the trick.
They really bloat your stomach. So
It doesn't, you can't eat too many of them, otherwise they.
It's possible.
It's
Yeah.
very
get them before they start to sprout. Right.
If you cook them, Mr. didn't like the taste of them. They taste like the hearts of artichoke.
Yeah, they're like a chestnut. Right.
They're delicious.
here, honey. You'll have to